and participate fully in the discussion and answer part at the end. You can feel free to unmute yourself at the end and turn on your camera. Just know that we are recording and we'll be sharing this webinar as well. A reminder to please speak at a pace that the interpreters can interpret too when you do that. So we'll be having McKenzie Jones, who is a worker owner at CoLab Cooperative and a peer advisor with the Co-op Clinic, and an organizer and musician extraordinaire, sharing a lot of experience about onboarding and bringing on people into your cooperative and hiring, and especially with a co-op lens. And later in this webinar, we'll also be hearing the experiences from Eulalio from a Yard and a Half Cooperative. And like I said, at the end, there'll be time for question and answer. But as you have comments or questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If you are bilingual, please try to put your questions or comments in both English and Spanish in the chat, or otherwise someone here will help translate those. So I'm going to pass it over to McKenzie, and thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you so much, Matt, and for that introduction and for inviting me to speak today. Thank you to the Co-op Clinic. Thank you so much to Ron and Elizabeth for interpreting today. I appreciate so much the Federation's commitment to language justice. So, as Matt said, I'm a peer advisor with the Co-op Clinic, and I've also been a working member at CoLab Cooperative for about 4.5 years. And one of my main roles there is in hiring. And there's a reason that many organizations outsource hiring needs, because it's complicated and difficult. There are personnel issues to manage, there are compliance and legal issues to manage, and it can generally feel like an overwhelming task to try to navigate adding people to any business, but in particular cooperatives, because of the importance of the membership path and employees being part of a team, a long-term team. So I've put together some important steps and considerations that I've learned to make, and these are by no means exhaustive. There are many more things that people can think about when hiring, but I'll start here, and I look forward to hearing some questions at the end. So as far as the steps of the hiring process go, step number 1, which might seem obvious, but isn't always, is the determination of a need. Sometimes a need for a new role can feel a little urgent. Sometimes we don't realize when we're in the middle of a project that we wish we had somebody to support us on that project yesterday. So it's really important to always have an eye on what roles need to be filled as work is coming in, regardless of your industry. CoLab Cooperative is a tech co-op, and so we're often finding ourselves needing support from a new designer or a developer. I see someone who's part of the Federation's Tech Peer Network, and we've often talked about adding new people to our team and the excitement and the challenges in that. So the first thing is determining the need and having a really clear understanding of what the role is that you want to fill, because for starters, there's going to need to be a job description as part of that. And beyond that job description, which should outline things like expected number of hours someone is working, the responsibilities they will fill, benefits they might receive, the path to membership, etc. That job description is going to get posted, hopefully far and wide. And something that I really want to point to is that as we hire, especially from cooperatives, we really want to make sure that we're casting a wide net, because ideally our cooperatives are representative of our communities across race and gender and orientation and political ideologies and so on and so forth. And so it's important that if we want to hire with inclusivity in mind, that we try to post and advertise our job with inclusivity in mind. This is sometimes easier said than done. Certain places that we want to post jobs can be cost prohibitive. It might cost a lot of money to be able to see someone's resumes. Certain big websites, big job websites that you might be familiar with. The USFWC has a jobs board and of course is connected through grassroots efforts to a variety of people from different backgrounds. A lot of times we find people through referrals. Word of mouth is really important. So I find that whether or not you're posting your job on Craigslist or Indeed or Monster or your own website, it's also important to share with your personal and professional networks, mouth to mouth, that you're looking for someone. It's a great way to find a right candidate because we already have trusting relationships with our partners in our networks. There are 2 rounds of selecting candidates then during the hiring process. The first round, assuming you've got a few people to choose from, a few people who have applied, narrowing it down to who you'd like to interview. And I think that the collection of materials is important here. So getting examples of someone's work, whatever work that might be, getting a resume, getting a cover letter, understanding who people are. It's helpful to ask for someone's experience in cooperatives, for example, ahead of time so that you know if you want to interview them or not. And then comes interviews, and that can be done in a number of ways. Some organizations choose to develop a hiring committee. Some organizations choose to pick people who are the right fit for the type of role that will be filled. It depends a lot on the type of work you're doing and how many people you have, the kind of support you have in your co-op. But conducting interviews is a really important step in figuring out who seems like a good fit. And it's important to remember that you're not only interviewing a candidate, but that a candidate is interviewing you as well. Chances are someone looking for a job and interviewing with your co-op is seeking employment at multiple different places. So it's a really great opportunity to be able to share your experiences about what it's like to work at your co-op and to impress upon them the values and the principles that you have. And then beyond that, whether you do 1 round of interviews or 2, so on and so forth, then you make your final selection, your candidate selection. And from there come several steps around onboarding somebody, but we'll get to that in a moment. So some important considerations that I have come across in my experience hiring is that the roles and responsibilities of the job be very clearly defined. It can be easy for us on the inside of the co-op to know the nuances of what we want someone to be able to do. But someone interviewing for a job or coming from the outside doesn't have that institutional knowledge or the experience of the role that needs to be filled. So it's really helpful to make bulleted lists of things that you want someone to do. And don't be shy about including details like, being responsive to emails 5 days a week, or we really hope for someone who has family values, or we really want someone who has this skill, but also can help us with human resources type things. This is a job that will be responsible to client deliverables, or this is a job that will help us with our systems. Those kind of really clearly defined roles and responsibilities are very helpful for everybody. It's also really important to include membership fees and duties and to detail the process of someone becoming a member. Opposed to different structures of businesses, cooperatives are special in the fact that ideally, everyone or most people who are part of the organization are on the path to membership, to being equal owners. Lots of co-ops have different ways of doing this. In some cases, there are tiered memberships like at CoLab. In some cooperatives, only members are workers. There can be a mix and a match of different types of things. And I'm happy to talk about some of the pros and cons of those different scenarios during the Q&A if anyone's curious. But it's really important to let people know when they're applying for the job that this is a cooperative and that there is a path to membership and what the details of that path to membership might be. And I think it's important to keep in mind that cooperatives are a little bit like families because of the long-term nature of ownership of a business together. And so you really want to be hiring with that in mind. This is someone that you're going to be working with, ideally for the long term. So how do you want them to get there? What is the path for them to get there? As I mentioned before, with posting a job in a variety of places, we have to ask ourselves, is this opportunity accessible and inclusive? Of course, jobs are going to be specific based on the need that is being filled and a specific skill set. You might require a certain certification to fill a job or a certain education. But beyond those specific needs, making sure that the opportunity is accessible and inclusive to all people, no matter where they are, no matter what background they might come from. And that can be a little bit complicated to figure out, and it can be hard to know how to reach people from inclusive demographics. And so that's why, organizations like the USFWC and their co-op clinic can be helpful in linking someone with a peer advisor who has these networks of people from different backgrounds. And as I've been mentioning too, it's important to determine how a candidate will align with your values and principles. As much as you might want to hire a new pottery maker based upon their ceramic examples, you also really want to make sure that they are interested in a self-governing body. It's not just the job that's being filled, but also the role of being a cooperative member that's being filled. And so making sure that your mission, your values, and your principles are expressed clearly upfront is important for both you and the candidate to determine long-term success. And this consideration you'll see a few times today from me. Is your hiring process fair and consistent? And what is fair and what is consistent might look different for different co-ops, but it's important to make sure that the opportunity that you're presenting to people, the interview process, candidate selection, that you're viewing it with an equitable lens, and that you're doing it in such a way that someone could look back on the record and see that all candidates were given a fair chance, and that they were selected based upon their skills and not because of some other decision that might not have been fair to make a decision based upon. Could you please advance to the next slide, Matt? Thank you. So now that you've made a decision based on your hiring need and you've gone through a process of selecting someone who you think is the best candidate, you make them an offer and they accept. Congratulations, you have a new potential member in your cooperative. There's still a lot of work to do to get them set up. First and foremost being orientation. This could mean orienting them to both your systems physically and your culture. And so that might be things like time tracking, invoicing, are there benefits that they need to sign up for? All the way to things like we use nonviolent communication, or we make our decisions based on consensus, or we practice in sociocratic circles, et cetera, et cetera. It's very important to make sure that new team members are equipped with being oriented to the entire cooperative, both hard skills and soft skills. This might include on-the-job training for the actual skill being hired. And I highly recommend, it's kind of like a peer partner type of system or a buddy system, so that someone new can have a point person to ask new questions with. In the case of Collab, when we hire a new designer or a new developer, we often offer them some training on one specific project on a trial period. This is something that a lot of cooperatives do because of the high stakes of inviting someone to be a member or a co-owner in a co-op. It's really advisable to have your early agreements be based on a trial period, whether that be 30 days or 90 days or a certain number of hours. I highly recommend that you create a period of time during which you provide resources to a new person, orienting them and training them, and then revisit the agreement and make sure that the pay seems fair and that the policies are understandable and that all of your systems are something that the new hire is capable of understanding. And offering resources for them to check in on later, whether they be a membership pathway document or a flow chart of decision making. Those things are really helpful for new hires to have on hand. And honestly, they're really helpful for all cooperative members to have on hand. I've been with Collab for 4.5 years, as I mentioned, and sometimes I have questions about our policies or our procedures, and it's really helpful for me sometimes to review the documents that were shared with me when I was hired, or that we share with new hires today as part of our hiring work. And I highly recommend ongoing support in this same nature, whether it be through the buddy system or through printed resource materials, or maybe you decide to offer ongoing training so that people can get up to speed at the same time around your governance or your industry certifications or whatever it is that you might need to be managing. So some important considerations to make during this onboarding process: Have you shared all of your policies, legal documents, and best practices? It can sometimes feel like a big task to have all of these things ready. So I highly recommend having them organized in a place. You can have a folder that says new hire documents, and to know that all of these things need to be shared with someone so that they are informed about the job that they're getting into and the culture of the cooperative that they're getting into. It's also important to keep track of things like W-9s and tax information and address information and so on and so forth. So collecting that information during the hiring and onboarding process is really important. How are you making sure that new team members feel welcome and safe? One way to do this is to offer, like I mentioned before, nonviolent communication training to everybody, including new hires. A lot of cooperatives will go through sexual harassment training to make sure that everyone can contribute to a harassment-free zone. This is required by many states. And creating policies around how people communicate with each other, work-life balance, et cetera. Those are important things to have prepared for a new hire and for everyone to experience in the cooperative. An important thing to remember is that it may not be the job itself that needs a really robust introduction, but your organization. Chances are, let's say you're in a welding cooperative, you're hiring someone with welding experience. They might not need a whole lot of on-the-job training in that skill. What they might need a lot of orientation and introduction towards is your policy or your work culture or how you speak with each other or your systems. Do you use Discord? Do you use Slack? Is there help to set up those new accounts? Which health insurance should I choose, et cetera? It's really important to remember that the introduction and the orientation to your organization might be just as or even more important than the introduction to the skilled job itself. And again, is your onboarding process fair and consistent? Are all people who are being onboarded given equitable access to the same resources? Does everybody have access to the same type of buddy system? Those are important things to keep in mind. You would never want to look back in time and realize that someone who was struggling at work might have been so because they weren't provided the same level of care during their onboarding process as someone else. So those are just important things to keep in mind. And you can go on to the next slide, Matt. Thank you. So as part of the onboarding process and then beyond, there are a lot of personnel policy things to keep in mind. Some of these are going to have to do with like state required laws or things that are legally implicated, things around taxes and stuff. So making sure that all of your new workers understand their rights and responsibilities as employees, making sure that you're on top of industry standards for certifications. Of course, this is very different if you're in an agricultural co-op versus a manufacturing co-op versus an artist production co-op. They're all going to look really different, but it's very important for there to be someone, whether it's this hiring committee or whether it's someone who is tasked specifically with human resources type work, to keep track of these compliance and legal matters. Something that comes up very frequently in all businesses, but of course also in cooperatives where we govern ourselves, is conflict management. One of the benefits of worker cooperativism, of course, is that we have the ability to practice democracy at work, and that we are able to make decisions for ourselves, among ourselves, that impact the work that we do. It's really quite a benefit over the standard capitalist type of business structure where there's an owning class determining all the rules. Of course, with those rights comes a lot of responsibility, and decision-making together can be very overwhelming. It can be long, it can be slow, it can be difficult, and it can be very emotional. And so it's really important to have, not just for new hires, but for everyone who's part of the cooperative, to understand how conflict will be managed. We have to admit that conflict will arise at work. We are humans and we are flawed, and our diversity is part of what makes us beautiful. But it can be really tough to disagree with someone about a work matter. And so it's important to have some kind of flow of or a process so that people know how to air their grievances, so that people know that they are safe to bring problems to someone, so that they know that there will be a group of people who are going to help them work through something together. So I highly recommend developing a conflict management protocol and then being sure to share it with new hires very early on so that it can help them to feel safe and welcome in your cooperative. At CoLab, we've had our fair share of conflict, and we have sometimes outsourced support for this. And that's something that I can't speak to highly enough. There are organizations that can provide support with conflict management when mediation is necessary or when a topic is too heated for those in the middle to make a decision. A lot of these organizations like Aorta offer a sliding scale based on how much an organization can afford. And I know that the Federation has a lot of resources available to co-op members. So if and when you get into conflict management, or as you're hiring new people and onboarding them and realizing that you don't really have a protocol for managing conflict, please don't feel like you have to go through that alone. It's really important, and there are a lot of resources out there available to you. Similarly, financial agreements are some of the most exciting and some of the most challenging aspect of being part of a cooperative. So I would highly recommend reaching out to banks or financial institutions or lenders or people who have some kind of expertise in that realm with a specific lens for cooperatives. Because of course, again, the outstanding difference between a worker-owned cooperative and a standard capitalist business is that those doing the work own the work and share in the profits. And so there might be a buy-in that is required for new members. There might be a buyout when people leave. There might be some requirement for a certain amount of hours people put in to stay in good standing with the cooperative. And there should be some kind of agreement around what happens when the cooperative is either profitable or not. Profits can be shared among all members, and that needs to be fair and inclusive. And also the burden of borrowing money is shared among all members. And so I definitely encourage folks to come up with policies around finances early on and to keep them, policies are best when they're somewhat able to be changed, but when they're very clear right now. So a lot of these things I wouldn't put in your bylaws, because your bylaws are going to be your, very formal agreement around what it means to be a cooperative member. But certain things might change, like your PTO, paid time off policy, might change year to year, or the way that dividends are sent, or the way, or whether or not your cooperative is going to match a retirement account contribution. Those types of things that are subject to change deserve their own policy documents, their own decision-making around them. Legal implications are also something that will come up with a worker-owned cooperative because of shared ownership. And so it's important to know who is authorized to sign things or make payments on behalf of the cooperative if it's not every member, and how to deal with things like conflict of interest. There will be times when there are many owners of a business together that a decision is being made and it might impact certain worker owners differently because of personal situations. And so it's really important to keep in mind that there are a lot of different legalities around worker cooperatives and standard businesses. And unfortunately, in many cases, the law isn't catching up quite fast enough, not quite as quickly as the movement. And so some states offer cooperative law that is more supportive than others. Again, the Federation can lead folks to links, can lead folks to support services around legality. The Sustainable Economies Law Center offers a legal cafe that I highly recommend for startup co-ops or co-ops who are dealing with a legal thing. But having those policies in place, again, as early as possible and as clearly as possible and shared with everybody, especially including new hires, I can't recommend that enough. And I have here to be considerate of beginnings and endings. So people will join cooperatives and people will leave cooperatives. Sometimes it's necessary to terminate someone. Sometimes a member will decide that they're ready to move on to a new phase in their life. So as much attention as we're paying to hiring and onboarding new members, we also want to pay attention to members leaving. What is the buyout like? How quickly can someone expect for their capital contribution to be returned to them, if there even is a buyout? What kind of exit process is there? How can we close the chapter of someone being part of this co-op in a meaningful way, given that you were member owners together for a while, making decisions together? So some important considerations about personnel policy. How do you ensure that your policies reflect your mission and values? If you're a cooperative that is committed to social justice and economic justice, are your policies reflective of that? Or are your policies maybe favoring certain members over others? This can be really hard when we get to decisions around tenure and things like that. If someone's timeline within the cooperative is longer than someone else's, are they eligible for more benefits, things like that? Do people who have families get more paid time off than people who don't have families because of a maternity leave policy, so on and so forth? Are all members getting the same kind of equitable policy treatment? And does it reflect the mission and the values of the cooperative? Keep in mind that self-governance is what makes cooperatives really special. Most workers in the world do not have a democratic vote in their workplace. Being a member owner of a worker cooperative is an intense privilege that all people should have access to, because no one should own the work that we do except ourselves. And so again, with that right comes a lot of responsibility. And so just keep in mind that even if it feels tedious, these policies are part of what makes your cooperative stand out from the rest, and ideally will be what attracts people to you who are of like mind and have similar values. Again, coming up with a process for resolving personnel issues. Do you have a team of people on your cooperative who are part of an HR department? Or do you maybe outsource that work to an organization that has more skills in that area? Often in cooperatives, we find that most of at least the founding members are people with a specific job skill set, but not necessarily the skill set of running a business, especially one that is run democratically. So just keep in mind that there will be personnel matters to think about, and it's important to know ahead of time how you will manage them. And again, I'm happy to offer some examples of best and worst practices that I've seen around here. Another really important consideration around policy and onboarding and hiring new people is the transfer of institutional knowledge. The beginning of a worker cooperative is usually really special because it comes out of people coming together with a shared idea and with a purposeful mission to do business as part of the solidarity economy. And so it's important for people who are there early on to be able to share a lot of that knowledge around the motivations for the cooperative and around the early policies for the cooperative, and being able to share what has changed and evolved in the cooperative. But something to be wary of is what some people call founder syndrome. People who were there at the beginning often feel a sense of ownership over the life of the cooperative, and rightfully so, but it can be difficult for new members to catch up in a sense. And so there's a really delicate balance there required for hiring new people to make sure that they understand the history of the cooperative, but to not overwhelm them with information, and also to be forward thinking about how they can contribute to the future of the cooperative. So as is the case often, there's a balance between the past, the present, and the future. And having perhaps the history of the cooperative as part of onboarding practices might be a good habit to get into, so that folks who are joining the co-op not only understand its current mission and practices, but also its origin. That can be really, really meaningful in helping people to feel welcome and included into a tight-knit organization like a worker-owned cooperative. As I said, rely on outside support. A lot of this policy orientation, a lot of compliance and legal and tax issues feel kind of beyond a lot of people. I'm not someone who has special training in human resources matters. I don't know a whole lot about the financing and legal things around co-ops, except for my experience in a lot of co-ops and trainings that I've gone through. But I assume that when most people are joining co-ops, kind of like I did years ago, they don't have special knowledge around this. So it's important to rely on outside support, whether it be through a peer advisor as part of the co-op clinic or other, cooperatively minded legal and financial services or conflict management resources that are part of the cooperative network. And again, are your policies fair and consistent? If we are offering paid holiday time and you have an international cooperative, are those holidays based in the US, or are we offering paid holiday time for a diverse set of holidays across all of the nations that we are represented by? That's a specific problem that CoLab has had to deal with. How can we make sure that we're ensuring a fair and equitable paid time off holiday schedule, given that we have worker owners in multiple continents? I say it's a problem, but again, it's an opportunity too, for us to be able to govern ourselves and to have determination around how we want our community to feel. And at CoLab, we really do feel as if we are family, and we feel as if we have a responsibility to each other to support each other, knowing that it goes full circle because we are all the workers and we are all the owners. That's it that I have presentation wise. Matt, is there anything you'd like to follow up with, or is Eulalio here for us to conduct an interview?
Eulalio is here, so I can introduce him real quick. And yeah, we can have a conversation. McKenzie and Eulalio are going to have a conversation, continuing this theme of hiring, onboarding. Eulalio is a worker owner at a Yard and a Half Landscaping Cooperative in Waltham, Massachusetts. A really successful cooperative that converted from a landscaping company, and has built some amazing leadership within their cooperative. And Eulalio has also supported several other cooperatives and is now consulting with Boston Center for Community Ownership and other Massachusetts area organizations. So it's great to have his experience here as well. So I'll take it away, McKenzie, with some questions. Some people did come late, so make sure you have chosen a language. There's interpretation going on. Es importante que escoge un idioma. Sí,
It's important that you
necesitario.
choose a language channel.
Okay, thank you. I will try to speak slowly for our interpreters. My apologies if I sped up in my excitement previously. Hi, Eulalio. It's very nice to meet you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me over.
Wonderful. So, would you like to provide an introduction to yourself, a little bit about a Yard and a Half landscaping before I ask you some questions?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Matt, for the introductions. I think that he did very well, better than me. Just one thing I'm gonna say that your process is very similar, almost the same as we go with the onboarding and hiring and get thinking about new members on our co-op. So I'm kind of nodding all the time that we're kind of the same page.
I'm so glad to hear that. It helps to know that that there are others in the network doing things the same way. So I have a couple of questions for you, Eulalio. The first one being, how do you manage the timing of adding someone new to the cooperative? As I mentioned during the presentation, often realizing that there is a need for a new person feels a little late. You're on the job thinking, I really wish we had someone else here to be mulching this garden with us today or chopping down these trees. How do we get someone here right away, knowing that it might be weeks or months before finding the right candidate? How do you manage that timing and keep an eye on needs coming up?
So as everybody, I think, if anybody doesn't know, a year and a half landscaping is we do gardening work and door construction. So means we are seasonal business that over the winter we cannot do much, and that's where right now we starting the process to prepare our budget for the next year, and that's where we already know how many people we're gonna need for the upcoming season. So that's where depending of our sales budget, and that define how many new people we need to bring it in. And so for the upcoming year, but also during the year that you were talking about, like different roles and different positions, we don't just define how many people we're gonna need on the field. We, as we work, we define what other roles or other positions we need to kind of fill it in. Like, if we need a membership person that takes care of the members, or do we need an assistant or a trainer for anything about the co-op, or where we have a committee that's kind of take care of what we need in terms of education. So they help the board to kind of prepare and hire these people before it's too late to kind of work on it.
That's amazing. I'm so impressed that you're able to have your next year's budget as part of, to include new hires as part of next year's budget. That seems like you've really created a system where you're looking ahead and thinking ahead. And I wonder if it was always like that for a yard and a half, or if there was some learning there where you realized that you were looking to hire people too late, or the timing felt off.
So somehow the owner, before we become a co-op, she always kind of have an open book administration, and somehow we participate during the process, so we get a little bit of training on that way. And so when it comes to when we become a co-op, it wasn't something 100% new to us. So we have some training, and that's being part of our success, because we already have like a kind of myself about 5-6 years of training on that. But there are other people that they've been there for like 10-15 years, so they have a full knowledge about that.
That's great. So that speaks to what I was mentioning before about institutional knowledge and the transfer of historical decision making throughout the life of the cooperative. It sounds like having a transparent financial environment with the previous owner really helped you and the current co-op members to understand the financial landscape, which is really fortunate for you. That is not the case in all businesses. So I'm really happy to hear that you've been able to do that. And I think for each co-op, as far as timing the needs of new hires and understanding yearly budgets, it takes a lot of practice. I think it takes a lot of practice, and it might take a few cycles of doing it before really understanding the best kind of timing and the best approach.
Yeah, that's one of the things I want to kind of reinforce on that, when I remember my first year when I became an employee of a year and a half. I was doing the budget just for my division, so it's something very small. And even it was so small that, I have to kind of present it, and then, they rejected like 3-4 times before it was accepted. So it's like, don't take it personal or kind of drop it off if it doesn't come out the first time. It kind of takes time to get it done right.
Right. And that's the beauty of a cooperative, is that some of those decisions can be made collectively. So on that note, how do you make collective decisions, knowing that it can be hard to coordinate many people who have a voting right in a democratic workplace? Again, this is that balance of like the benefits and the challenges of being in a worker-owned cooperative. It's really important for high quality of life and job satisfaction for people to be able to make decisions about their work. But if you've got a 30-person membership and they're all chiming in about this candidate versus that budget versus this timing, a lot of details can fall through the cracks, or a lot of decisions can take a very long time to make. So I'm curious how you manage that balance of coordination among a membership.
Yeah. So it's so many decisions that we don't have the time to be involved with every single one. So as a cooperative, we create a chart to kind of don't we don't want to I don't want to be part of every single decision. I think the chart what that we have, some of the decisions that we just drop it to the CEO or to the board or to the finance committee or to the education committee or the human resources committee. So we don't have to be involved on every single decision. And also that, sometimes we have to say that, the CEO just needs to consult to the board about the decision, but the CEO will have the final decision on that. Or the CEO needs to kind of consult to the finance committee per se, if it's, we purchase a truck or we purchase it at, a heavy equipment that is going to cost more than $50,000. So, they need to consult to the finance committee to see if we have the money or is it doable in the middle of the season, or we have to wait until next year budget. So it's like we kind of come back to that chart and kind of make sure we're doing the right thing, and or sometimes there are decisions that me as a project manager I can take on without consulting anybody, but it's already decided. The whole group give me that power because they know that it's something that I don't wanna consult with the whole membership about buying a gift card for my crew or something like that.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's really useful information for all cooperatives to understand the decision-making tree, especially as it relates to hiring, because there are membership and legal and financial implications to new hires. Which body is authorized to make which decisions, and can everyone agree and accept those decisions? And how does that body make decisions? Those are all really important considerations. And I would say they are things that should be part of a cooperative's bylaws or policy documents, and they should be shared early on in the onboarding process so that current and new members alike have an understanding about decision making. It can help so much for those things to be clear up front. I have a question about your specific industry, but I think it's general to any cooperative. Have you ever found yourself being surprised by something that you didn't understand to be important during a hiring process? For example, are there certifications required for landscapers? Or maybe someone needs a special driver's license to be able to drive heavy equipment. How have you managed things that you didn't know when you were hiring new employees or members? And what learning has come out of that for you?
Well, it happens. It happens all the time. I think that when we hire someone and then we kind of didn't check, or it went over like without seeing the issue. I think overall, we're not looking to, the candidate as very meticulous and check everything. But if it comes that issue, we as a cooperative, we have done it at least twice already on the last 8 years, that some of the people doesn't have the licenses or being certified to do the work. And what we have done as a cooperative is that we as a co-op send the people to get the training and get the certification, and make sure we help them to understand that yes, we want, we thought that you had it, we didn't mention it. I know I kind of assumed you had it, but we have an issue, but it's not that because it happened we're just gonna drop that person. I think a year and a half, we kind of, like you were talking about, like join the co-op is like a kind of join a big family, and we always try to see it like that. Mostly our workforce is Latinos, and we're trying to kind of reinforce that, make sure that if we have an issue, let's resolve it all together.
I love that response. I think it's really inspirational to know that your cooperative is invested in its workers, because of course, being invested in workers means investing in the cooperative, in a worker-owned cooperative. And so it feeds into that cycle of success and job satisfaction and learning, and the entire cooperative having the opportunity to evolve. And I think that providing that kind of training is really important, and something that probably we could speak to a lot more of, but being able to offer certifications or learning opportunities for cooperative members, I think is such a valuable way to invest in the community and the co-op as a business. So that's great that you've been able to do that. And I know that that's not always easy to do. And so maybe people will have questions about it, but that's, I just love that inspiring story about not wanting to drop people. I think all too often, especially in manual labor positions, maybe workers are seen as very dispensable or expendable. So to invest in cooperative members is something that really sets the cooperative movement aside, I think. I have a question about whether or not a yard and a half has ever had to terminate somebody, whether this be like a short-term employee or a cooperative member. Please tell us a little bit about that experience, because that is one of the most challenging things that a cooperative can go through, is having to terminate somebody.
Yeah, well, and it was a special one because an important role playing on the co-op. I kind of, going back to what you were saying about that, sexual harassment, and even if we are a co-op and we're a family, we still have to follow some laws that, no matter what, whatever we can do as a co-op, but we have to still kind of follow through those. So, and then we have to fire somebody who was sexual harassment to another member. And it's not like we want to do it, but it was that it was no way we can kind of look the other way, and even like I say, it was a very, very important role. He was an account manager working directly with me, and even it hurts a lot, like financially to the co-op, and to to everybody. I think it was a big, like, eye-opening to everybody that it's like we cannot kind of let it go. If it happens, we have to act, and we have to act according to the law.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It is really, really challenging, whatever the circumstances are, to have to terminate somebody. And as part of that ending process, I highly recommend some kind of, accountability protocol, so that sometimes if there are incidents, whether it be around harassment or not following up with tasks, or being someone who is difficult to work with for any number of reasons, at CoLab, we try to instill a process where we want to hold our members accountable to themselves and to us for being principled workers, but we want to do so with compassion and support, which means that if we need mediated conversations, we will help facilitate those. If someone needs support around learning or a training or changing their perspective about something that isn't healthy that they're bringing to work, we do our best to do that. And so I definitely advise, as part of the personnel policy being developed, that it clearly state the process of termination, and maybe someone gets 1 or 2 or 3 chances, and maybe there are certain things where you can't ask questions about it. Sexual harassment for certain co-ops and a lot of businesses is maybe a 0 tolerance type scenario, and that goes to helping the cooperative as a whole to feel like a safe and inclusive and welcoming workplace for people. But you're right, it hurts. It hurts to let people go. It hurts to lose friends. It hurts to lose good workers. And it can have a lot of legal and financial ramifications for the cooperative. So hiring and terminating people both carry a lot of weight for the future of the co-op.
And like you mentioned it, a lot of this stuff is being read in the bylaws. So we have a few things that, even if we want it, we cannot give second chances to the people. So, as a member at the beginning, that there's certainly, a few things on that list that we cannot just let it go. We have to, and then, like you say, you have to be accountable to yourself that, I know sexual harassment is not something that I can do and have a second chance. So it's like, whatever is the process is also there, that the board have to make a decision, and the CEO have to follow up and do the termination.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Sounds like it was a really vulnerable situation, but one that you learned a lot from. I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll let participants ask some questions that I think you and I can both answer. So my final question to you is, Without knowing the makeup of people on this call, some of them might be part of startup cooperatives, some of them might be part of established cooperatives. If you had 3 pieces of advice that you can come up with around hiring, what are the 3 best practices that you would advise or recommend to any co-op?
Well, the first one is that go very slow. Don't, even if you need a person yesterday, don't decide quickly on whoever is gonna join the co-op. Remember, it's not about the membership fee. It's about that you're gonna be working with that person and you're gonna be making huge decisions with that person. So you want somebody who, like you were saying, that share the same values, have family values, and have kind of want to work with you with the same ideas. And it's all about the co-op environment. Another thing is that share as much information you can at the beginning. Financially, how you made the decision. Give a copy of your bylaws and make sure that they understand what the existing members have decided already, and make sure that they are okay with them. If something that probably bother them is going to bother them all the time. So make sure that those decisions that people already made are okay with that person. And I think that and the other one, no matter what industry you are, don't look for the most experienced person. I think that the less experienced person can be one of the best candidates for you guys. Whenever you have new people, I think the thing you have to look on the person is that the willingness to learn and the willingness to kind of try new things, because in the cooperative, every day, no matter what industry you are, you're learning so much new stuff every day.
I agree with that. Thank you. So to recap, the 3 biggest pieces of advice you would provide are to go slowly with making hiring decisions, regardless of how urgent the need feels to you. Share as much information right away as possible, because that transparency will help to make it clear whether or not it's a good fit between the candidate and the co-op. And I loved what you said, that if they're bothered by something in the bylaws at the beginning, they're going to be bothered by it later, and it's only going to get harder to deal with. So I really appreciate that. And also to not rely on the most experienced person in the field, but to look to maybe someone with a fresh perspective, someone with a willingness to learn not only the skills of the trade, but also the values of the cooperative and how to be part of governing a body with other people. I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for all that information. Matt, do we have time for one more question, or would you like to open it up to the group now?
One more question, go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so then my last question, Eulalio, is related to the previous one. Do you have any advice about what you definitely would avoid or not do, or something around, like, in my experience, trusting our instincts is really important, and so kind of like you said, to not rely on the most experienced person, but to look for someone willing to learn. Don't be swayed by a fancy resume, but read the cover letter about someone's cooperative interest, so on and so forth. What's one thing that, after all of your experience with a yard and a half, you can say doesn't work when hiring a new person?
Well, I don't know if I want to repeat myself, but one of the things I think it doesn't work when you make it easy for that person, and you're trying to like you say, you feel like if this is a good candidate, and I gonna kind of picture it, all the beautiful things about the co-op so that person can come in. On my experience, it's like I will talk about the best stuff first, and kind of show the real thing. One of the things I always say to the people I talk and the people I kind of give advice is that there will be a days that you will be rolling on the floor, pulling your hair, and that we got get used to that, because it's gonna happen in the beginning, it's gonna happen 3-4 years later, it's gonna happen at the end, whatever. It's gonna come, those days are gonna come to you. And then, you have to think about it, like, do I want to be involved in this? So I think don't say, I hear when people say, like, all the co-ops, all this new thing, and is something that we created a bubble for that people, and then later they come the issues and the problems and misunderstandings and go on, and then they drop it because they didn't feel it was right for them.
Yeah. So not just sharing the good parts of being part of a cooperative, but the good, the bad, and the ugly. It sounds like it's important to be really clear and transparent early on. I agree. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to put all of that in writing, in policy documents and in the bylaws. It makes everything easier down the road. I sometimes like to think of my present self and my future self. And if I feel like something is kind of overwhelming, I try to push through it because I know that my future self will thank me. And so I think it's important for cooperatives to have that kind of long-term mindset, even though it might feel overwhelming or difficult or tedious to develop these documents and protocols early on. They will only serve to benefit the cooperative down the road and make it that much more clear and easy to hire and onboard new members. Well, thank you, Eulalio, so much for answering those questions. I feel like I put you on the spot with some of them, so I appreciate your candid and flexible replies. It's really nice to learn about a yard and a half. I think we can open it up now to questions from people observing the webinar. Is that right?
Yeah, feel free to chime in. I have one too to get us started as people think of their questions or comments. And this could be for you two or other folks. Related to that last comment you all made, during that onboarding process, sometimes, people are presented with so many policies or, 10-page packet of bylaws written in very legal language. I've seen some co-ops do visuals of some of those documents or some popular education practices. Do you have any other experience, or does anyone here have any other practices that can really help people engage with that material, which many people have come up with maybe many years ago, or throughout many years, they've come up with all those policies, bylaws, operating agreements, especially around rights and responsibilities. Have people experienced any good ways to have people engage with that?
That's such a good question. I see a hand from a participant. Maybe we can start there, Barbara, and then Eulalio or I could speak to the question also.
Hi, I just had another question after this. I mean, I could actually speak to this question because I've been in a cooperative for 4.5 years, but I would love to hear what you guys answer. So I'm just gonna wait and I thought that raising my hand would let you know that I had a question. So that's all.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. We will keep your hand there and we'll get to you in a moment. I guess I'll take a stab at that question first. I think that I'm a really big fan of active facilitation. I think that learning happens best for people when it's multimodal. Some people are visual learners, some people are auditory learners, and there are lots of different ways that we imprint information into our brains. And so I would recommend, as part of a hiring or onboarding process, to almost like role play certain scenarios. We see this a lot with, again, to go back to like sexual harassment training, right? We watch videos of people interacting in the workplace and then say, that was appropriate or that was inappropriate. I understand this sort of thing. And so I feel like it can be really helpful to be active in role playing. And of course, as a lot of businesses are remote right now, it can be challenging, but if people are in a room together, whether it be virtual or not, being able to say like, okay, you are candidate A and you are candidate B, and you two are talking about a governance matter. Here's what our policy would say. You know, can you please act that out? I also agree with visual like charts, decision-making charts and decision-making trees or flow charts and diagrams. We use those a lot at CoLab to help us, in particular with our hiring process, because there are so many details. We realized we needed to be able to just look at it and say, here we are in the process. We need to get to here, and these steps are in between. So I think taking a kind of multimodal approach and making it as relevant as possible, making the process of learning policy something that feels relatable to people is important. Eulalio, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so to become a member, we have requirements that everybody needs to fill it in. And one of them is the 6 classes that they have to take in first. So we just now handed the operating agreement to them. We go through the with them one-on-one and describe it. And like I say, you know, our workforce is more Latino, so is that, you know, and then we don't have a high level education at the cooperative. Also, that lawyer language, you know, who put the operating agreement, nobody's gonna understand it. Like even me, you know, I have to translate it and you know, kind of understand it before I could understand it and talk to everybody, you know, anybody at the co-op. So we're going through the whole history, we're going through the bylaws, we're going through, you know, the finances, we're going through the chart that who decide what. So we got, you know, a lot of training on that way. So that way that, you know, we understand, and we make sure that the people who want to become a member understand, you know, all the laws and all the requirements and all the things that we have already made for them before they become a member. So and then, you know, we make sure that they agree with the stuff we have created already for them.
So again, having everything out in the open early on can only serve to benefit, and providing that one-on-one attention is so important for creating a long-term relationship of trust and understanding with co-owners. All right, Barbara, let's move on to you. I think you had a question. Feel free to speak to that last question if you want to, but also happy to hear your own question.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that, I don't know, should I turn my video on?
If you'd like to, we can say hello.
Sure. Hi, I don't know. I'm working at my desk, so maybe you can't see me. There we go. So when we became a worker cooperative, we converted from a sole proprietorship of one of our members, and somebody created the bylaws. Well, actually, what are they called? Where we ended up creating an LLC. So I forget what it's called. Not bylaws.
Operating agreement. Yeah.
Operating agreement. Thank you. Created that, and also another document because we use sociocracy for governance, and that was all about meetings. But what happened is that for us, we had to live the bylaws in order to, the operating agreement, in order to realize that there were some things we wanted to change. So I kind of resonate with what you had said about people take things in a different, like there were some things that none of us could just take it all in at once and understand what it was. But as things unfolded, we were able to like make adjustments. And so anyway, I just wanted to say that, but I have two questions basically. And one is, do you have experience or have any idea about how we do it? Is that we hire people who are not necessarily going, we're also a landscape company, Regenerative Landscape Alliance. We're in Santa Barbara, California. We hire employees who are not members, and we have a 2-year process for people to decide as they work with us and as we work with them, if they want to become members. So it's something that's, we don't have to decide, we don't have to like hire someone and have to know that they're going to be a member at the moment that we hire them. And then one of our issues about getting new members is that we also converted, like I just said, from somebody else's business, and we've been paying a certain amount of money to buy that business over a period of years. And it's not a lot of motivation for new members to come in and be part of a company that's in debt for this. It's a tremendous, it was like a 30-year established landscape business, and all of the tools and the vehicles, a couple of old vehicles, but, we definitely needed to use them. So I think that it's been hard for people to understand why there's that value to pay that. And that's been kind of a, what's the word? Impediment. It's probably not the right word for new members. So if there's anything that you could say about that, that would be great. So thank you.
Thank you for those thoughtful questions. I'll take a stab at responding to the first one, and then Eulalio, if you'd like to take a stab at the second one. So as far as hiring new members and having like a trial period or like a probationary period, I think that's really wise. I think it's important to hire people with potential membership in mind, but understanding that you might not get there, right? But you don't ever want to be in a position where you've hired somebody who you kind of know isn't going to be a good fit, and then it turns out that they're with the co-op long-term and maybe there's consistent tension or something like that. So whether it be 6 months or 2 years or a certain number of hours worked, I do think it's important to hire people not as members immediately, and to offer some kind of period for both the cooperative and the new candidate, the new hire, to get an understanding of what it's like to run a business together. And I like how you put it, Barbara, that you have to live it, right? Sometimes these policies have to be lived. Sometimes operating agreements and bylaws have to be lived before we can really understand what it's like. And you just got to work with people to know what it's like to work with people. Interviews are different than, regular weekly meetings and group projects and stuff. So I do think it's really important. And I would have that pathway to membership and the process to get there clearly outlined in operating agreements or policy documents or the bylaws, depending on how hard and fast they are. Those things might be subject to change over time, but it is really important to let people know at the beginning the expectations around their long or short term. And some co-ops do it differently. At CoLab, we do have people who are members and have invested capital. They put money into the cooperative. We have people who are members and have been with us for a certain amount of time, but have not invested financially. And we have people who are not partial owners. They're not co-owners, but they're collaborators, people who want to work with us, people who we want to work with, but who don't have an interest in owning the company. Some cooperatives only allow positions to potential members. There are some organizations that have, maybe like cooperative members and then other like, a separate collective. Meerkat Media is an example of that. So I think it's it's obvious, it's up to the group to decide that, but I definitely recommend having some kind of trial period. Eulalio, would you like to speak to, the value of buying a business that is in debt? Oh, you're muted.
Well, just one more thing regarding the, having employees versus members at the beginning. What it defines, that is the legal structure of the cooperative. So to begin with that, not to get into too many details, but you want to double check that to make sure your legal, the legal structure of the cooperative. So as a conversion, we also bought a business from this person, and we have a huge debt because we have to get into a loan and buy the cooperative. And I don't know how many people start do the conversion with you guys, but we were kind of the same boat that, for the first 3.5 years, we didn't produce any profit for ourselves. It was to paying off this loan, huge loan, because it was, well-established business who has all the equipment and all the clients, and we're going to produce a lot of money, but yes, we have to pay it for. I think that's one of the things you have to talk to people and be open about a long-term investment. This is not something that we're gonna get money next year or next month. We have to kind of, as anybody who start a business, have to put a lot of investment at the beginning, and with the best hope that if it works and it produce profit, we're gonna get something in return. I think the best way to go is that talk about it, but also show numbers to these people, to the new members. And one of the things we didn't know, we start to make profits, and we can share profits from the beginning because everybody was so excited, and it pushed really hard that the business from being to $1.5 million in sales per year. Our first year, it went to 2 millions. So we get a lot of profit into the first year. And so we can show that, but instead to take all the profits, out of the cooperative, we decide as a group not to remove that money until the third or fourth year, that we want to kind of leave the money so the co-op can kind of survive financially, and without getting more loans to repair equipment or to buy new equipment. We were like a kind of financing all those things with our own money. And then when we showed that the people that all the capital accounts of the members were like a kind of, started receiving money from the first year, and we showed the financial reports that, we're really working hard, and we know that we're not going to be in debt forever. And actually, the plan, it was to pay off within the first 5 years of the co-op, and within the 3.5 year, the co-op was pay off. So, and then this is the things that people need to know, that we're very knowledgeable doing the work on the field, but also we know enough finances education that we can, we have the projections, we know that we'll make money, and if everything continue working well, it's not like it's gonna be in debt forever. we get a, a point to reach that, then we have to start to kind of share those profits. And that's the thing, like it helps you to not to convince, but kind of when you sharing the information and you showing the information in numbers to the people and help them to kind of learn and understand those numbers coming from, I think that it will, it's easy to kind of go. We have a 2 years period to wait for the to become a members, and the people, like 2 years are coming up, and they know, by June, I can become a member, and it's like I say, when you share the information, they're like a kind of willing to kind of work with you.
I agree. There's a self-selection bias to cooperatives.
Well, thank you so much, Eulalio and McKenzie, for sharing your experiences, your wisdom, your collected, thoughts on this. And I just want to leave with a few, key announcements and resources we're going to get for you, because so much of this, these policies, you don't have to start from scratch. There are some great examples out there, and we are happy to share some of those resources with you. We'll be following up soon with a brand new mini guide that we created on this topic at the co-op clinic at the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops on onboarding and hiring, and some others that are linked to it around conflict, around trial periods and fees. So we'll be sending that out soon. And I encourage you all to connect with our co-op clinic if you need support on setting up these processes. We have great peer advisors like McKenzie who can work with you through these processes and help you find the best templates and create policies that work for you. I just wanted to leave with some announcements of other ways to plug in. Here's a great resource as well that's online. But we have several events coming up that are ways for you to plug in. Some I want to mention here. We do a monthly startup webinar. So if you're in that startup phase or want to do some education with some of your co-op members, they're the first Friday of the month at 12 Pacific, 3 Eastern. So this Friday, the 3rd at 3 p.m. Eastern. And we have another one of these webinars coming up about conflict. How do you move through conflict in a way that's generative, that builds your co-op instead of having it break your relationships down? And that's at 4 p.m. Eastern on Monday the 13th. For those of you who are Federation members or want to become members before this date, we have a membership meeting on Thursday, September 23rd at 6:30 p.m. So Eastern, make sure to mark your calendars. And we have this worker co-op week coming up in November. So check out conference.coop. There are some great sessions in the works for that. It's all virtual this year, and hopefully we'll be in person again sometime soon. Thank you to the Tilde Language Justice Cooperative that did the interpretation for this workshop. You can find them at tilde.coop, tilde.coop. And thank you again. And I don't know if there's anything else from my awesome behind the scenes coworkers, Raquel and Kate, that should be shared at this moment. If not, we will wrap up and send you lots of follow-up stuff.
Thank you, Matt and everyone, for organizing this.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.